It's my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I am your host for tonight, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my home in Fort Wright, Kentucky. Also joining me by the powers of Zoom is our presenter for the evening, Bryan McIntyre, and my assistant for the evening, Heather Cook, from her dorm in Worcester, Ohio. So thank you all for being here. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's History Museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. Foundation, and our members. If you are not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. You can learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. We would love to hear from our viewers tonight, so if you have a question or comment to share, please type it in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Let's meet tonight's presenter. Bryan McIntyre, known to many as Lincoln, has been a beloved figure at YMCA Camp Ernst since 1973. Although he jokes that he's been at the camp since its founding in 1928, his connection to the YMCA runs deep. During the school year, McIntyre teaches English part-time at Northern Kentucky University, and in the summer, he immerses himself in camp life. As the in-house camp historian, he presides over monthly camp history chat Zoom calls and maintains the camp's documents for American Camp Association accreditation. McIntyre is also the author of Camp Ernst's 90th anniversary history booklet and is currently working on the 100th anniversary book for 2028. So thank you so much, Bryan, for being here. Welcome. There is a quiz question tonight. So the first respondent to enter a correct answer in the chat on Zoom or Facebook Live will win a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize. And most importantly, bragging rights. Tonight's question is, what is the name of the Newcastle, Indiana native who became physical director for the women's department in 1946? So go ahead and get those answers in the chat. And then Bryan, if you are ready, you can go ahead and get started.
Sure, why not? My screen share here. And there we go. Well, welcome everybody. It's good to be back again, the Northern Kentucky History Hour. We had the first half of this presentation 2 weeks ago and focused on the founding of the YMCA, Covington YMCA specifically in 1888, and through its move to its location on Pike and Madison, which you can see in the picture here, and up until 1939. And in 1939, the longtime General Secretary, for those who weren't here last time, General Secretary in today's parlance would be Executive Director. He had been with the Y for 21 years altogether, 19 as General Secretary. And then he had some health issues, and on the advice of his physician, ended up moving to a different climate. He ended up in Florida for several years. Ended up being fine. He came back and lived in Cincinnati after that and the rest of his life. But he was then, since there was an opening for General Secretary, the board discussed it apparently rather briefly because they pretty much knew who they wanted if they could get him. And so a call was put in to North Carolina, to the home of the former physical director of 10 years from 1926 to 1936, Willard L. Wade. And they invited him to return to Covington as General Secretary, and he agreed. And there he is. That's about what it looked like when he arrived in here. And that made big news in the papers, and one of the papers that had Wade returning. And this is, and here's coming in. This is in August when he took up his duties then, and ended up remaining at the Y until his retirement in 1972, after 49 years total working for the YMCA, 43 of them in Covington. So if anybody is familiar with the Covington Y, you would no doubt have heard the name Willard L. Wade, or maybe seen Willard L. Wade down there, depending on how far back you go. I just tossed this in just for your amusement. This is about what it looked like around that time. This is 1942, actually. We have the front of the Covington Madison Avenue side of the Covington YMCA. You can see visible here. You can't see the Pike Street side. It's Pike right here, but that's how it looked in 42 with the bank on the corner. Oh, there we have, this is actually the Power Workout for Business Girls is what this program is called. So this is 1940. I'm not entirely sure what it is they're holding. I thought at first dumbbells, but that doesn't actually work. So someone has their fingers sticking straight up, and apparently they grip it inside out. I don't know. They also have things in their shoes that are white. So I'm not sure, but that was their workout. And other types of workouts. Over on the left, we have some boys that have the commando training. And they were doing this more military style with their doing their calisthenics and then climbing the rope. And if any of you have had that experience climbing the rope to the top of the gym, or doing that at the Y, doing that in high school, junior high. I always thought it was interesting. I assume they don't do that anymore, but back then we'd go all the way up to the top, and there was just a 1-inch mat at the bottom, I guess to protect the floor in case we fell. It sort of wouldn't have protected us. But on the right, there's a picture of some women doing various activities in the upper gym. The upper gym we talked about last time was added in 1930 to on top of the original gym. It was built in 1913. Well, not on top, I mean on the next floor. So we ended up with 2 gyms. And those back windows are looking out toward Scott Street, if you're familiar with the Covington area. And we have the supervisors for the women and girls department. We had Ann Campbell was the original one, and then she left, and Nellie Shields was in there for also 20 years, and then Dorothy Westridge actually worked for the Y, starting in 1939 as we're doing aquatics, and then she took over as physical director, and then ultimately after her predecessor left, she became supervisor of the Women and Girls Department and served until 46. And then she ended up going off and working in the business world in Cincinnati, doing various things. She was replaced by Drusilla Ham, who had been a high school business teacher. And she ended up being there for about a year and 4 months as it happened, not a long time. She decided to go back to teaching. Both of these women also served as, ran the girls' camp at Camp Ernst in their respective summers. Westridge from 39 to 45, and then Drusilla Ham 46 and 47. Hired at the same time as Drusilla Ham, or shortly thereafter, actually, it was in the spring of 1946. There was a young woman from Newcastle, Indiana. She had graduated from Hanover College and then had a teaching job, teaching phys ed for girls at a high school in Seymour, Indiana. And then had spent the previous 2 years, 44 and 46, working for the Red Cross and some US OCAN teams. She had a couple of those, first in England, and then she was in France and in Belgium for a bit. And she had returned home to Newcastle, to her parents' home, and was trying to figure out what comes next. And through a friend of hers, she had heard there was an opening for a physical director for the women's department at the YMCA in Covington, Kentucky. So she checked it out, and well, I guess she liked what she saw and heard, and the Y liked what they saw and heard. And so Martha Bunch started her long career at the Covington Y. If anybody knows anything about the Covington Y, certainly you'll be familiar with Roll It Way. You also likely be familiar with Martha Bunch. She served as physical director, as I was saying, for a rather short time as it happened, 46 to 47. And then ran the Women's and Girls Department from 47 to 79. And then we'll have that associate executive director position. I'll come back to that later. But she ended up until she retired in 79. And she still continued being associated with the Y, but I expect her name will pop up here again at some point. And here's just a brochure from this time period, just to see some of the activities that are going on in the 40s. There was basketball the YMCA invented, not the Covington YMCA. It was invented at Springfield, Massachusetts, at the YMCA College. But the Covington Y had a basketball team since the very first year. They had basketball teams in 1892. It had been invented the previous December at the college. But there were men's leagues, boys' leagues. They ended up with church leagues, businessmen leagues, industrial leagues. And that was just, and you see some of the teams over here with their various uniforms. We talked last time about the Puritans. It was the Y's men's team, and then they had the Senators for Senator Richard P. Ernst. That was for the boys team. And then we had the teenage canteen. So they had music and they had dancing, and just a nice place to get away, nice wholesome place, and so on. And some other groups in action. The Y was used obviously for YMCA programs, but also by a number of churches and civic and social groups over the years. And there were rooms available, later dining rooms that ended up before. At this time there was a auditorium, and then the gyms were available. And then later we get the dining rooms. We'll come to that in just 51. Then there the Wise Men's Club. I'll talk about them in a moment. So these are just groups. This was part of the young adult program. I can see where they can get their soft drinks and their ping pong, and just they saw the dancing earlier. And this went on for quite a long while. And there's also dancing for adults. This is up on the second floor of the building. This would have originally been the men's department when the building first opened. This section was, but then it was renovated over the years for various reasons. Last time we talked about with the department store that had been, well, the whole first floor on the Madison Avenue side was retail space. That was intentional. The idea was to have space available, so or not space, have the space available for retailers, but that would provide income for the YMCA to help support the building of the YMCA and running the programs. And then used to be the men's entrance was on Madison Avenue, was again later, but in 37 it moved. So that one retailer in specific, SS Kresge, some of you might remember them. That was the department store. They had the whole full first floor on Madison Avenue for well, from 37 up for a while. We'll come back, comes up later because that's significant. And just some other activities going on. We have archery and tennis lessons. And this is all in the gym. So. And some other activities. There was the Indian Dance Club. We said there also was I would have been involved with we had a Indian Guides program. It was a father-son organization, and later expanded to have the Indian princesses. The program still exists now. It's Y Guide, so check out the Native American aspects of it. And that's just a model of Camp Ernst, the Covington Y's summer camp. That's people from the Leaders Club. And we have the Tri-High Y and High Y clubs. Those were high school clubs for boys and girls respectively, and later combined. But Women's Supper Club, this was, they also was a women's luncheon club. They had multiple days even started doing these things. It became quite a popular thing with these meal clubs. They'd get together and have activities. I have a slide up there, some of the things they did in a bit. But I mentioned the Wise Men's Club earlier. This was a national program they had for the Wise, well, international actually. And these are just people, working members of the Y who would just wanted to help in the Y programming. They did a lot of work, especially with the boys programs, and helping to build things, fundraise. In fact, in the group on the left, they were here at Camp Ernst. They had just recently helped to raise money for a new swimming pool in 1953. The four people in the front, including Jim Burton here on the right, he was the president of that committee and later president of the Covington YMCA, but they were the committee in charge of that fundraising drive, and they would come out and help get cabins ready, and they would do programs with the Covington Y. So that was always a big help. They were always ready to step up and do their part. And then the Women's Supper Club, this was generally associated with Martha Bunch. This group, they kind of just really talked to her, and she just really enjoyed working with them. But they would have themes. In this case, a fashion show, it would seem. And then there was another one. This is a brochure for another program to do with Western Days. It always they would go to camp every year for a weekend, and there was always a theme for the weekend. And so people would bring in costumes, and they'd have appropriate music and skits and so on, things that would go along with that theme for the weekend. And then on the for the supper and lunch clubs, they would also have themes for those particular meetings, usually at least on a monthly basis. They would do special things. And some got quite elaborate. They would do musical things and I think fashion shows, just whatever. What they can think of next. And we also had the Leaders Club. This would be for high school age for boys and girls. And then there was, they also helped with running activities at the Y, served as counselors at Camp Ernst and so on. And then there was also, for the younger folks, still there was fundraising for various reasons, sometimes for, if there was a capital campaign trying to get new buildings or help to support people who could not otherwise afford to go to camp or to go to the Covington YMCA. Sometimes they did what was called the World Service drive. They have for selling candy, cookies, or whatever it might be. Cookies in this case, they have the official cookie salesman caps on, as you can see. And some of you might have had a chance to taste some of those cookies or candy bars or maybe help sell them. I did, I know. So that was just to help them get involved and do their part as well as the older, the teens and the adults. In 1953, we had the arrival of Orrin DeVan. Well, I shouldn't say arrival because Orrin DeVan had pretty much always been there. He had served as a counselor at Camp Big Bone, was the precursor of Camp Ernst. We had at Big Bone Lake State Park for a couple of years before moving to our current location. But he had was a counselor those first 2 summers. He also worked as a swim instructor for years as in high school and college at the Covington Y. He served on the Y board. He served as acting physical director on a couple of occasions when there would be a transition period between physical directors. And he was actually ended up serving as camp director twice in 41 and then again in 42. In 41, the camp director from 1940, Harvey Mattingly, ended up entering the service because this was during World War I was underway, or I'm sorry, World War II was underway in 1940. We hadn't gotten involved yet, but directly. But he ended up joining the Army and served throughout the rest of the war. And then he was replaced by Richard Sneed as Boys Work Secretary in Covington. His appointment as Boys Work Secretary was announced in the newspaper on Saturday, December 6, 1941, the day before Pearl Harbor. And so he ended up, before summer came along, he also joined the Army. And so Orrin DeVan stepped up again. And then by the following year, he was in the Navy himself, and he was there for the duration of the war. He was also a teacher and coach at Holmes High School. So if anybody's associated with Holmes High School, you might have heard of him. Also spent a couple of years as principal at 6th District School toward the end of his career. But he came as Boys Work Secretary in 53 and say through 68. And so another well-known figure. Pooty was his nickname. So if you remember him, you might remember him by that name. And just some more shots of the gym. We have people on the trampoline down below and the track suspended above the lower gym. And I have a picture on the right as well. Can't really see it. I tried to get that lightened up enough. You can't really tell them, but when you come around the curves, the track was banked. So you could build up momentum. There's a lot of laps that you get around. You get 26 laps to a mile. So a lot of around and around. And over here in this picture, the boys' lobby would be off to the left. You can't see here, but this door over here is going up to the upper gym. You can see it over there and it goes up. And the other gym that was added in 1930 was directly above that. It's actually larger than this gym, but it's the bottom gym was 82 by 50 feet, and the upper gym was 82 by 75. So it's, and here is some pictures from the upper gym. If you're familiar with that, you would recognize some of these. Up here, little basketball action. And then gymnastics. Then the lower gym, so another popular activity. Never quite got the hang of that myself. I took some gymnastics class as well, the basic things early on. Got into the tumbling stuff a little bit, but getting those apparatus stuff, that gets kind of tricky. I'm not quite sure how they do it. I've never been terribly flexible either, so that probably didn't help. And here's some additional activities that were going on at the Y. going to take your pick, little fencing action, guitar lessons, painting with Miss Sheppy. Looks like it's another. It was dance class. It was leather crafts. The other person was actually a teacher at Dixie High School. It was, last time was Carter. If anybody was familiar with him, but he would do different craft projects. And in this case, worked with leather work. And they actually had a what they called fun school. And they had a whole range of activities you could do. Some more physical, some more just kind of sitting and working with your hands or learning a musical instrument or painting or whatever. They just a new batch every as the season rolled around. And those were always popular. And those ended up being done in other branches as well once we had other branches. This is just a shot of the boys' lobby from the 40s. Do you have a phone there? So they're moving up there. And then the pool, rather small pool. If anybody remembers that one, that's where I learned to swim. I would imagine some of others here might have as well. This corner is been memorialized. I'll talk more about that later, but it's still around. But remember that corner. And then the diving board, you can see, of course. And a little more diving action. This is Martha Bunch, the Women's and Girls Director, showing off her skills. And that's a good showing off. That's ceiling. You can kind of see how that's kind of low. I remember we used to like to jump off and try to hit the beam with our hand to see if we could touch that. I'm on the tall side, so I could actually hit the ceiling with my hand. I was always wondering if that was too hard, if I could hit something worse than my hand, but oh well. It was fun. That was the pool I knew growing up. In 1964, the Covington YMCA officially became the Young Men's Christian Association of Northern Kentucky as of August 6th that year. And there's the official document from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And the Y had been growing. It's still basically just the Covington Y, but there had been some programs growing in the Tri-City or in Florence since 55 actually, and then about 63, 64 starting to get going in Fort Thomas. And they kind of basically became the Tri-City and Campbell County Y, although they didn't have buildings yet, but they did do programming. In both cases, they used some local churches and schools to run programs. But that was the official name change at that point. Actually, the Covington Y then started to become referred to, well, I guess not so much at this point as much as it was in 67 when the other two had actually buildings, but then it was referred to as the Central YMCA. And here's one of the dining rooms in 51. As part of a reconstruction project, they ended up adding 4 dining rooms. This is looking out over Madison Avenue. There's one actually up on the roof, the terrace rooms. And then there was the Kentucky room, and these could be used for people could rent them. Groups could rent them if they wanted for programs. And of course, the Y would have programs, and there would be meals as well as that. And then there was the lunchroom upstairs on the second floor as well. It was around for quite some time. I remember eating up there from time to time. And there's Willard Wade manning the soda fountain. And here we have, this was the main entrance for the men and boys. I mentioned the original men's entrance was on Madison Avenue, and that changed in 37. And this picture would have been, probably around 68 or so. This is John Saul. He became physical director in that year. And then, but he'd also been associated with the Y, helping out with various things prior to that. And Orrin DeVan, the boys' work secretary, and then Willard L. Wade, the general secretary. Oh, then there was big news in 1966. The S.S. Kresge Company, which had a department store on Madison Avenue, had the whole first floor, all the retail space. There have been several retailers there originally in 1913 and the years following, but by 37, they had taken over the whole thing, which worked well enough because that brought in income for the Y and helped with building things and maintaining things and running programs. But Sam Kresge, the first SS Kresge, he died in August of '66, or I'm sorry, a little bit early August, but not long after that, it was announced that the Kresge Company was going to be not renewing its lease when it expired at the end of April in 1967. So they decided they wanted to focus more on their suburban stores, which they were known as Kmart. So you might have run across that name as well. But they left in April of '67, and that left the Covington Y trying to figure out, well, now what? But over here was talking about ultimately it was that they thought about trying to find another retailer, but that just wasn't as practical. The population was dropping by this point in the late '60s. No more in population in a bit, but that's people were moving to the suburbs, but the counties were growing by leaps and bounds, but the city not so much. And so it was not considered practical to find another retailer. And so they decided to expand the Y just into that. The Kresge, the other retailers before them, had that whole first floor in the front part of Madison, about halfway back, and then they had the basement under that section of it for storage. And so they decided to expand there, which we'll see more in a bit. And over here on the left, we've got some construction going on. This is the Fort Thomas YMCA, Campbell County Y in Fort Thomas, and then the Tri-City Y in Florence. Tri-City Y still exists, although not by that name and not in that location. It's now out on Route 18. It's the R.C. Durr Branch YMCA, but that was just the staff and members from the Tri-City Y when that opened. They just moved there. So those are still in operation. Then we have the Campbell County Y dedication in '67. And you can see what it looks like over there. And then there was people gathered around, the ribbon cutting, fun stuff. And then the Tri-City, same way with the cornerstone being laid, and then it's opening it also in '67, a couple months later. And this is Tri-City from the outside. This was on, for those, the building's not there anymore. It's on Main Street, though, near the corner of Turfway. And also in 1967, the YMCA officially changed its logo from the one on the left, the triangle with the YMCA bar, to the kind of the bent Y with the triangle. And that remained the Y triangle or the YMCA logo until it changed to the current one in 2010. And I like this. Everybody has their Y mug with you, right? So everybody else brought one. Here we have the plans for remodeling the Covington Y. This is taking place over a period of time from late '67 into '69, and this is the what it was meant to look like. The bank was still in the corner here, but this was the Madison Avenue side. So again, this level here was all Kresge at that time, before up until earlier in '67. And over here you have some. This is a building here under construction. You can see the YMCA sign here. So this is the Y stretching along here. There's Willett Wade and the architects over here, Pressler, and then Calvin Wallace. You see their names over here. Oh, that's Charles O'Landro. He was the chair of the Covington Y board of directors at the time. He was also involved with, in designing the Cincinnati airport. There's also a building named for him at Northern Kentucky University, Landrum, Charles O'Landro Academic Center. And in March of '68, it had pretty well finished. There were still some things to finish up, but for the bulk of it was ready. And in addition to this, by this time they're referring to this as the Central YMCA, because it had the two, the Tri-City and Campbell County now with buildings in place. I don't know why they didn't stick with just Covington Y, but I guess they thought it just made more sense. I suppose where the central office was located. At this point, too, Richard Myers over here he was hired as executive director for the now Central Branch to allow Willard Wade to focus on more big picture, focus on the whole YMCA of Northern Kentucky. Because up to this point, from the number it became the Northern Kentucky Y, he was overseeing everything and still running the day-to-day operations of the Covington Y. But this gave him a chance to focus on other things, fundraising and just overall supervision. Dick Myers, he'd been instrumental in getting the Campbell County Y started back in the mid-50s. And then here is the Y as it looked after it was completed. The new first floor we'll see inside the moment. And then that's the second floor, we saw the dancing, and there's various classes taught up there. And then the dorms were up here on this third level. And here, just to give you a sense of what this was looking like at the time. We did have, this is the Madison Avenue side over here. This is Pike Street along the bottom. But all of this section over here was redone. There was a lounge back here. This is now the main office. And then there was a lobby, and here we had steps to get down to the basement for the locker rooms for men and women. And then over here is the men's health club. There's another picture of that coming up. And then some more offices over here, and then this passageway over to the boys department. And then this is the gym over here, and then the women's section, which was added in 1930, women and girls section. And then the upper gym was basically running in this area up here then. And also this, well, I'm going to see the basement in a minute, because the basement runs all the way across here, but up to this point, this part from Madison over to here would have been storage for the retailers on Madison Avenue. And here is the bottom floor. So you can see now it's expanded the locker rooms. There's an exercise room. Women's health club is added. There's a lot of renovations down there. And there's the men's health club, as it looked in the drawings and pretty much in real life. And then the women's as it looked in their drawings, and then some of it in action. In 1970, beginning of January, it was announced, by January 1st, it was announced that Martha Bunch, longtime supervisor of the Women's and Girls Department, was named associate executive director for the Central Branch. And she ended up still running the Women's and Girls Department, but has also had the additional responsibilities. And then later that month, January 25th of 1970, the Central Branch, formerly the Covington Y, became the Willard L. Wade Branch in honor of its longtime General Secretary. And there we have the proclamation. This was proclaimed Willard L. Wade Day in Kenton County. And that's just an article about it. So I won't read through that. You can always hit pause later and check that out if you want. It just talks about his life in North Carolina and his long-time experience here in Covington. And in 1971, there was the start of a capital campaign. This was, there's fundraising for various things to help people who can't afford programming, or just to help out with new programs and such. But we also had capital campaigns with board looking for a large amount of money, trying to usually build new things, either entirely new facilities, as we did with Tri-City and Campbell County, or additions to existing facilities. And this was the kickoff for that. I was mentioning earlier the differences in the counties, how this was changing over time. Covington in 1940 was at 62,000. It peaked at 65,000, a bit over 65,000 in 1930. I don't have it on here, but there was up to 64. And then and it started dropping off from 60 to 70. This is the period we're kind of looking at, from 40 to 90. But from 60 to 70, it's a drop of 8,000 nearly people, and it just kept going down. And the number in parentheses is the current population, well, at least as of the 2020 census. On the other side, the counties were growing. 93,000 in Kenton County, up to 142,000 in 90, and then 10,000 in Boone County, quite small. It was a tiny little county, 10,000 people, but now up it was up to 57, and then now it's 135,000. That was really growing. And the same with Campbell County, not quite as much, but it did grow as well. But that's why that expanded out into the suburbs. That's where the people were going, and there was a need for that. And there was just some of the needs the branches were putting forth. The Wade was looking for a new swimming pool. That didn't actually happen. They were looking for a new pool out. It would be in a parking lot at the to the left where the Women's and Girls Department is. It was, if you haven't remember that area, Campbell County was looking for a gym. They didn't have a gym yet. There was not money for that when they opened. The Tri-City was looking for an outdoor pool, which they got in '76. And then there was the Family Circle Camp at Camp. They were still raising money for that. This was something that Wade was really excited about. So he wanted to see this develop for family programming and family camping. We have family camps at Camp Ernst, have since '54, but he thought this would be, he ended up getting more land and building a whole new facility. The facility has been used, but never quite in this for the intended purpose. But in the end, it all worked out. And then in 1972, it was announced that Willard Wade was going to be retiring after, as I mentioned, 49 years with the YMCA, 43 in Covington. That's as he looked in 1926 when he arrived as physical director, Boys Work Secretary, and there as he looked in 1972. And there you have this, these are referred to him as Mr. YMCA, and talking about his retirement plans. He did mention his one of his pet projects. He said his point was the Family Circle Camp. I mentioned that was something he hoped to see that completed. In fact, he still hoped to see it completed, and said he was willing to do whatever he could to see that happen. And then there's a picture from 1930 at Camp Ernst with his family, and then in '72 with a couple of his grandchildren in his last summer as the General Secretary. And I saw the arrival then of George Edmonston as General Director of the Northern Kentucky Y. He was born in Tennessee, and then he ended up moving around different places and with his family. And then after he graduated from college, he ended up working for the Y, first in Louisville, and then as a program director, membership director, and then he was in Danville, Virginia, and then St. Augustine, Florida, and then he came to Northern Kentucky from there. And he served that position from 1972 to 1980. And he just tossed in a couple of shots. I talked about the dormitory last time around. This was a couple of shots from 1976. That was still in operation, and it was until the end of the '70s. And then we also had a couple of new branches. The Kenton County branch, although basically just they hadn't met in churches, pretty much like Tri-City and Campbell County did initially. And then their bus would pick them up in Taylor Mill and areas out there and bring them to Covington for programming as well. But they did get a pool and tennis courts in 1976. And then Camp Ernst officially became a branch in 1978. It had been the Covington Y camp before then. And then the following year, 1979, Martha Bunch retired. She was the physical director for a year and a half, and then women's director for quite a long while, Women's and Girls Department, and then associate executive director the past 9 years. And this picture actually on the right is from 2006. She was still working, in this case, the Covington Y had closed, the Northern Kentucky Y closed, the Covington Y had closed, and but she was now relocated at the Central Branch in Cincinnati. She still met with these women. They had the women's group that had over the years become known as Martha's Bunch. And this at the Y, a while, the headline was kind of a joke, because when she was first hired in 1946, or actually being interviewed in 1946, she was asked, if hired for this job, would you be willing to stay for a while? She said yes, and apparently she meant it. So, and then there's just the program ahead for her on her retirement, and so on. And then in 1980, in the fall, it was announced that George Edmonston was leaving the Northern Kentucky Y to accept a position as the president of the YMCA of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. And actually, it had been talk of a merger prior to that, and people kind of thought it was going to happen now. Look, now George will get it done, but it didn't happen, at least not right away. So he took off for then, not that far away, but he was no longer with the Covington Y. That brought in Jack Harvey then, a general director from 1981 to 1987, who had the distinction of being the final general director of the Northern Kentucky YMCA. Here's a newspaper article from 1984. It's just talking about the old Wade Y building and its future. It's had some issues structurally that needed work, and there had been talk before of trying to sell the building and building a new building somewhere, but that wasn't really working. So it's kind of getting to the point where it's not going to last that long, it seemed, but it was hanging in there. And then this is the minutes from the Metro Board from the Northern Kentucky Y in November of '86, and there were some issues with the money. They were going to be coming up short, but have a deficit of 58,313 for the year. The Covington Y had been losing money for a while. Camp had been losing money. Tri-City and Campbell County bringing in. Kenton County is just kind of getting started. So at this point, decided, well, they're going to reach out to the YMCA of Cincinnati and Hamilton County and see what that merger thing, see if that would work out this time. And so they got a committee together for that, and it happened very quickly. So there had been previously been talks over the years. There were pros and cons from both the Northern Kentucky side and the Cincinnati side, but ultimately it did happen. And it was announced then that the YMCA of Cincinnati and Hamilton County would be merging with the, well, I guess it would more accurately be the YMCA of Northern Kentucky is merging with the YMCA of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. And the subsequent association then would be the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati, which is still going strong today with Jorge Perez as our current president and CEO. So, part of the deal, well, I mentioned here local businessman George Buddick. You might have heard of him or his brother Otto. George was bought the old Y building in Covington and was planning to develop it. That didn't actually work out, and it kind of get bounced around over the years. Here's part of the merger agreement. It goes on for page after page after page. I didn't want to bring the whole thing, but just kind of basically they're agreeing to do this. And over here, I thought it was interesting, this one section, prior to the effective date of the merger, the Young Men's Christian Association of Northern Kentucky shall announce the closing of the Willard A. Wade building to be effective before May 1st, 1987. I guess the didn't want to have the new association, now the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati, closing this beloved building. And so it was announced that, well, the Northern Kentucky Y closed, that was on them. So, and the Northern Kentucky Y was no longer going to exist, so it all worked out, but that was in the deal. And so it was on April 1st, there was a meeting of all the boards of directors from the various branches on the Metro Board. I was there, and we voted, and it went through. And that's just the resolution, just kind of signing off and all that. On the upside, oh, not the upside, it's the upside. Yeah, this is just kind of sad thing. This is a ad that was in the paper announcing a auction on April 29th, 1987. Sold building, discontinued operations at this location. All the fixtures, equipment, furniture, even had gymnasium equipment, training and exercise equipment, a light new trampoline. Actually, I knew somebody bought one of those trampolines. And hundreds of lockers, folding chairs, tables, but it was all kind of sad, but everything had to go. But they did see the return of George Edmonston, who became the first president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati, and he served that to his retirement in '93. And so that was pretty much it for the Y. But a few years back, some people have heard, there was the Hotel Covington, which was located here in the old Coppin building. They decided they wanted to expand, and so the old building had just been around for years. There was a different attempts to get that renovated for some other space. I mentioned George Buddick. His plan was to have offices in there, and there was going to be an underground parking garage down in the basement where the pool and gym, the lockers were. But that never really happened. Then we had Kentucky had some human services there for a time. There was a bookstore for Gateway College in there, but a lot of it just kind of got unused. But that's the Madison Avenue side, that's the Pike Street side. This was the bank building, but the Hotel Covington bought the entire block there, including the bank, and sort of making plans to renovate it, and ended up calling it, and I don't know why I just didn't call it the Hotel Covington, and just because they do connect, it connects, they have a passageway to the Hotel Covington over there, the old copy building, but they decided to call this North by Hotel Covington. And, yeah, I remember, you can still find that on YouTube. On WCPO had a piece on that when this before it opened, just kind of going through and just showing all the renovations. It's kind of interesting to see if you remember that why you might find that interesting. This is they try to keep some of the touches. This is one of the hallways in the hotel. This was actually the running track. It would have been the running track back in the day. And this is over here, run for but we actually run for your life is what it said. And that was just left there. And there's various pictures throughout the building, various things from the Y from back in the day and through the years. And this is actually the lower level. This would have been the area where the locker rooms for the men, women, and boys and girls were all located. And actually, they used some of this tile. They were trying to replicate the tile from the old pool. That's what on these pillars. That's what it's one for. And in fact, speaking of the pool, this area over here is a little wooden section. That's actually the bar in this dining room. And over here we have this corner of the pool was preserved. This is actually what it looks like when they were cleaning up. They found this. Oh, the pool's still there. They dug it out. And they thought it might be nice to preserve that little corner. So they put a plexiglass cover on it so you can get and look it down. This is the lower, the corner. The Pike Street would be over here. So this is the shallow end of the pool. And just to go back to where we started, this was the Covington YMCA pool in July of 1945 with Carl Peters. He was physical director there from 44 to 46. But this is that very corner right here. That's what is under the plexiglass now. And as I mentioned earlier, where I learned to swim and where I've had friends learn to swim, and maybe you learn to swim, but as I say, the Covington Y ceased to be as a building, as a program. For a while, there was actually, for several years, a storefront operation across Madison, a little further down on Pike Street on the right, had some things in there, but, and there was talk of actually building another Wade branch YMCA somewhere around that area, but that never did happen. But as in Tri-City is still going strong. That's now RC Durr, Campbell County still going, and of course Camp Ernst, and then all now part of the YMCA of Greater Cincinnati, which I'm saying going strong. So even though the Northern Kentucky YMCA as a separate entity does no longer exist, it still lives on as part of the Greater Cincinnati Association, and that is that. So I will just stop sharing and we can do what needs to be done here.
Thank you so much, Brian. I love that they preserved the corner of the pool like that.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I'm going to have to go in there to check it out. I haven't been in North.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and get back to the trivia question, because we had a winner, correct, Heather? Do you want to repeat that question and announce the winning?
Yeah. So the question was, what is the name of the Newcastle, Indiana native who became physical director for the women's department in 1946? And the answer to that was Martha Bunch, and Donna Bresser got that correct right when it was announced right away. So congratulations, Donna. You'll be getting your prize.
Yeah.
I know that we had some comments about some people that have spent time at the Y, many a Friday family night or many a family week at Camp Ernst.
Right.
Let's see. And we also, I think it was Donna again, she said it was the only time she ran a mile without stopping.
Okay. Good for her. I remember we had a mile club. I had a card for that still. I still have the card. Good. Had to run a mile and swim a mile. And you got a little card here. So signed by Willard L. Wade himself. So
that's great. I think that's all the questions or any comments that I
think we had any questions, just a few comments.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for this
You're
wonderful
welcome.
two-part series. I love seeing all the old pictures, and I love that there's still parts being preserved inside the museum.
Yeah.
More to come in the future. So for more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest Curators Chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. Please like and subscribe. And just, we're going to roll out with a new season of Curators Chat coming this Thursday. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page. And that's all we have time for this evening. So thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters of BCM. Until next time, if we can get our sponsors up there, we'll take care. And everyone have a great night. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Brian.
Oh, you're welcome.